Tell us the genesis of Fourth Avenue Market.
So, excuse me, Fourth Ave Market, it started out with a partner of mine. We had been working in the corporate world for a while, and one of the challenges that I have seen as a black man working in the corporate world, corporate America, brand management, is there was so often I found myself fighting to be able to come up with products or market to my community, black consumers. I can give you one example. It was one time, it was one specific product, and I remember going to my manager who absolutely was not black and having a conversation and saying, laying out the data. African American men are X% more likely to have this issue. They're more loyal. They're looking for they're willing to spend money. They're looking for the product more than anybody else. And so as we went through the whole idea, it kind of came down to it. And he said, well, we can't put a black person in the ad because nobody's going to buy our products. They're going to think this is a brand that's only for white people or only for black people, excuse me. And my thought was, in 100 years of this brand's history, by accident, there was one time a black person probably might even been a shadow in the back of the ad. So how all of a sudden one particular ad that is going to go out for a short period of time, all of a sudden it's not something that we can do. It's not something that's going to help build a brand. And so from that and a number of other scenarios that were similar to that, it kind of made me feel, number one, that I need to take a step out and actually do something where I can actually grow a business and do something for our community. But what was the real genesis of the idea of Fourth Ave Market was when I looked at the market of hair care. It's a $2.5 billion market. $2.5 billion. It's the fastest, in fact, the only growing segment of the whole hair care industry is the black hair care market. But when you go into a retail store and you look, the traditional retail stores, they got the little small 4-foot section. It's called ethnic set, where they have one shampoo, one styling cream. And being at companies, I realized how difficult it was for our own innovators to be able to get their products on the shelf. It wasn't the quality of their product that was stopping them. It was the fact that these companies that had money were spending money to keep them off the shelf. They spend millions of dollars to make sure that you didn't have your product on the shelf. Then they'll create an inferior product and put it out there because they got the money to drive awareness. And as you mentioned earlier, they had a distribution.
Yeah.
And so what I recognize is that you have one challenge of traditional stores of not being able to get your product on the shelf. Then you got the other stores that tend to be in our community but not owned by people from our community that tend to make us feel crazy uncomfortable when we walk in, they'll follow us around the store, etc. And so we had to choose between buying or going to stores and not finding what we want, or going to places not wanting what we find, or walking to stores and find they don't want us in there. And so the reality is when you have this market of products, $2.5 billion market, 87% of the sales of the ethnic hair care market is done by people, by black consumers, yet we own 7% of the stores. So for me and my partner, we looked at this and said, wow, something has to be different about this, because the main thing about it was that money as a result, $2.5 billion being extracted from our community, it's not getting invested back in.
Right.
So we looked at it and said, well, how can we do something a little different? And so what we did was we were able to find, and this was through relationships that I had over the years, relationships with manufacturers and distributors who were like, well, willing to work with you. And so overnight, literally through some partnerships, we became the largest black-owned online beauty and hair supply company in the U.S. However, the Fourth Ave name comes from Fourth Ave District from Birmingham, Alabama. Many of us know Black Wall Street and the story of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, but many don't realize, actually I should say few actually who do know about Black Wall Street, right? Some may actually think that was the only one Black Wall Street type of place in the U.S., but there was a number of these places around the country. And so Fourth Ave District in Birmingham, Alabama was actually about 60% of all of the black-owned companies and businesses were done right in that little district. In fact, in the center of that district is where the bombing in the civil rights movement, where the 4 little girls died, that church is in the center of Fourth Ave District. So for us, the idea was not just we're a store that's selling products, black-owned products. We said, how can we use this as a way to actually recycle and invest $1 back into our communities? So we have opportunities for those manufacturers to now get distribution of their products without having to worry about the traditional retail stores.
So I love everything about this, particularly because I'm thinking about some friends that I have who were finally successful in getting their products, their hair care products, into the big box stores.
Yep.
Once they got there, they had a manufacturing deal. That was okay. They found out how much volume they had to purchase at first up front in order to stock the shelves.
Absolutely.
Then they found out whenever someone opens up the product, sticks their finger in it, sniffs it, and decides they don't want it and close it, they not only send the product back, but they have to still pay for that product as if someone had actually bought it.
Yes.
So they ran into the actual business reality of what it means to have your product in a big box store and ended up having to pull their products after having spent like a long time trying to get to that point. So the fact that you're able to recognize each of those roadblocks and we're able to plan around it, that to me is the type of ingenuity that we need. I was reading recently about a group that had just opened up a black hair care store, a brick and mortar. And one of the things that they encountered was the fact that because they were a brick and mortar and however their distribution and their market was set up, they were essentially cut out of being able to get the product because other ethnic groups that dominate the market were able to cut them out. So we had celebrated this store opening without realizing you can't just have a store in an ecosystem like that. You have to have your own independent ecosystem that accounts for the institutionalized racism that is going to intentionally spend millions of dollars to keep you and your products off the shelves.
And that was what was the main inspiration for us, because I sat on the side of these companies. I saw what happened, and it wasn't that they were necessarily doing it for any racist perspective. They were saying, how do I protect my dollar? How do I protect my bottom line?
There was a natural drink called Fresh Samantha that I love. It was one of those. It's not around anymore because one of the biggies bought them out and then put them on the shelf. Like shelved them.
Yes.
Because they could. It was a competitor to one of the big brands. It was a up and coming fresh juice, smoothie, and it was delicious. And they bought them, and it doesn't exist anymore because that's the way they do business now. If you can eliminate your competition,
right.
And I think the other part of 4th Ave Market, which is exciting to me, is the fact that we are actually going to support and build relationships with the barbers and the stylists who obviously are so key to our community. We built this huge database, 40,000 barbers, stylists across the country, broken down by city. So we're able to now have these relationships in Milwaukee and Denver and Chicago and LA and Houston to work directly with those that are directly in our community that can get the products in the hands of people who want it.
Which is something other ethnic groups can't replicate.
And because the barbershop and that experience is so
different.
That's unique to the black culture.
Right.
If we could use the barbershops as a hub, it was always a hub. The churches and the barbershops.
Absolutely.
And the beauty parlors. Always a hub to disseminate information, to organize. We need to get back to that because we still are in the barbershops and the beauty parlors. We still are spending we're not in the churches as much. There's a new study that shows that we are leaving the churches in droves. And primarily because the churches have not stepped it up and serviced the people where we are right now. They're using an old model, and a lot of it is self-aggrandizement. But this is important. So 4thAveMarket.com, where are you going with this? How are you scaling this? Because right now it's products for hair.
Absolutely.
Right? And skin and hair.
Right now it's beauty. It's products for skin, hair, men and female. But we see, there's really no limit to where we can expand to. And obviously we're going to expand the right way. We're going to do it in a disciplined, strategic way. But what the core of what we're talking about is that retail does not work for people of color. And it does not have to be. So our whole mission is about completely changing and revitalizing and the way that retail works for us. It doesn't have to be like this. And it wasn't always like that.
No,
and so that's why we say come back to how it was at 4th Ave on 4th Ave District when those days.
Or even the markets, the way the markets, when Black Panther showed a little bit of the markets, right?
Yeah.
Those markets, we saw them on 125th Street back in the day. Then they moved them. We are normal. That's how we actually, this is our genesis as African people. No
matter where we are in the diaspora.
Right.
That's what we,
that's how we market.
Absolutely.
That's how we market. We're used to doing that.
Definitely.